Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over how to build faster on console Fortnite. Building is arguably the single most important mechanic and skill for a player to have in all of Fortnite, and much like all other mechanics, faster is obviously better. It may get joked about a bit in the community, but being able to build the high ground or crank 90s faster than your opponent does give you a major advantage in all fights. Maybe not as much as it used to before everybody learned the power of low ground, but it's always better to at least start the fight with high ground. So I'm confident that the tips I share in this video will make you a faster and better overall builder, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so right off the bat, you want to make sure that you have the ideal settings to build as fast as you possibly can. First off, you need to make sure that you're using Builder Pro, but I'm guessing 99+% of you guys are already on that. Then you need to make sure that you have the setting Builder Pro builds immediately set to on. And finally, you need to make sure you're using a high enough building mode sensitivity multiplier. I've talked about this before, but recently a lot of controller pros have been bumping up their building sensitivity. In the past, it was really unheard of for pros to use anything over about a 2.5x multiplier, but now you have a lot of guys that are all the way up near 3.0 with relatively high horizontal and vertical sensitivities as well. Now, as I always say, if you're on console, I definitely wouldn't recommend going that high because on 60 FPS, that's going to be almost impossible to control. But at the end of the day, building sensitivity does play a direct role in how fast you're going to be able to build. If you're using a 1.5 building sensitivity with normal horizontal and vertical sensitivities, for example, it's going to be really hard for you to build super fast. But the good news is, since building requires much less precision than editing, it's a lot easier to control a higher sensitivity, so I would ultimately aim for something in about the 2.0 to 2.5 range. So now, let's get into the more specific things that you can do to make your building speed faster. One of the most important tips that I can give you is to work on lowering the distance your crosshair travels between building pieces. This was a really crucial part of the how to edit faster video I made last month, and it's definitely just as important for building. To showcase this, I'm going to play two clips in the background right now. The first will be a Plowlism, who's one of the fastest controller builders out there, cranking a few 90s in a row, and then I'll show you a second clip of my friend who's pretty much an average player doing the same thing. One of the main things that you're going to notice here if you look for it is how little wasted crosshair movement Plowlism has compared to the other player. When he makes the sort of square motion with his crosshair to place the 4 different walls, he does it with such little movement. If you highlighted the path of his crosshair with like a red marker or something, you'd see a very small square shape. So because of that, there's almost no extra crosshair movement, the time between the placement of each wall is reduced, and therefore he's building faster. If you didn't fully understand that, I'll show you a super basic example that's a lot more simple. So let's say you want to place 2 walls right next to each other for whatever reason. If you build the first wall while your crosshair is on the far right side of it, and then build the second wall when your crosshair is on the far left side of it, you barely moved at all and still place the 2 walls. However, if you start near the middle of the first wall and move your crosshair to the middle of the second wall, you still build the same 2 walls, but it took you a little bit longer. It may not seem like a super important thing if you're just talking about only building 2 simple walls, but if you're doing a 90 or high ground retake which requires you to place 4 to 6 different building pieces in a row, that extra time will definitely add up and make you build a lot slower. And based on what I've seen, it seems like the most common cause of unnecessary crosshair movement is when players either use a sensitivity that they struggle to control, or they just don't practice controlling their crosshair while building enough. It's why the best creative 1v1 players will win the battle of 90s for high ground off the rip almost every single time. It's not like they know some kind of secret 90 that's faster than everything else out there. There's not a high sensitivity, but at the same time they're also able to control it well enough to have really short and smooth crosshair paths while building. The next important tip for building faster is to make sure that you practice every different type of building. What I mean by this is that in Fortnite, different situations require you to build in very different ways. For example, if you're 1v1 build battling someone, that's going to mostly revolve around cranking 90s, high ground retakes, ramping over people, etc, etc. However, if you're in a low ground box fight on the other hand, you're not going to be cranking 90s or pulling out ramp rushes. You're going to be more concerned about things like piece control and making sure that you're always protected. Because of that, here's what in my opinion is the best way to practice and improve your building speed plus effectiveness in the long term. First, at least once every few days, you want to get in a decent session of creative free building. When you do that, you're in a very controlled and low pressure environment. You can chill, play music, talk to friends, and try to build muscle memory of those short and controlled building paths that we talked about earlier. However, as I'm sure we all know, free building in a private creative server doesn't take into account how you build against other players, which is absolutely crucial. That's why I believe you also have to spend time playing creative 1v1s and also either box fights or zone wars matches. There's a reason why all the fastest and best builders in the game are great 1v1 players. It teaches you how to handle certain situations that simply aren't possible to emulate when you're just free building. You basically get to learn which building techniques actually work against real players and which techniques don't. However, even though creative 1v1s are a great tool for improving your building speed, it also isn't totally representative of building in real games either. You don't have to worry about mats, every fight is a fight for high ground, most 1v1 maps don't have fall damage, and plenty of other things that you could nitpick. That's why it's also important to mix in zone wars or box fights as well. Those modes are perfect for practicing the things that don't show up in free building or 1v1s. And if you don't have any friends to 1v1, you can always just load into random creative servers and people almost always have a 1v1 map going, and then for zone wars or box fights, you can just use the new creative mode matchmaking. The next important tip for building faster is to put yourself in situations that require you to build fast. That may sound a bit weird on the surface, so let me explain. In the background right now, I'll show a clip that seems kinda random. It's the pro player GronKy in a regular arena game, and he basically tries to build up from low ground all the way to on top of a mountain while an enemy shoots at him and eventually ends up killing him. Now, it's not like Calc was stuck in the storm and forced to rotate or anything, and because he wasn't, on the surface, what you just saw may seem like a really dumb play, especially from a pro. But for Calc, this is just a regular arena game that he doesn't really care all that much about, so why not put yourself in a situation like this where you have to build incredibly fast and perfect to have any chance of surviving? If you make yourself comfortable with situations like that, then building fast in regular situations is gonna feel so much easier. I remember back in the day, Mongrel used to say all the time that when he was warming up or practicing, he would always try to push people on high ground even if he didn't need to because it made him uncomfortable and really tested his skill. The final tip I want to share with you guys is a bit of an unorthodox one, but I've heard a few good players mention it before, so I'll just throw it in here. Apparently, an interesting way to work on improving the speed of your building is to intentionally switch to a server that gives you really high ping, and then just hop into creative and free build on it for a few minutes. Not sure if everybody knows this, but ping does have a pretty heavy impact on building speed and effectiveness. The lower your ping is, the quicker the game registers that your building pieces have been placed. So when you switch to a really high ping, it's gonna feel pretty terrible and laggy. So you'll build around on that lagginess for a few minutes, and then when you switch back to your main server, it'll feel incredible, and building fast will feel easier than ever. The pro player EMAD refers to this as the ankle weight strategy, which is in reference to the people who do running exercises with weights on their ankles, so then when they actually run normally, it feels so much easier and they can run faster. I've only done this like once or twice, so I can't really comment on if it truly works or not, but I think it's a cool idea that a lot of people apparently vouch for. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. On a scale of 0 to 10, I want you to rate how fast of a builder you think you are. Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.